Chile with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Venus Hour. Soul Night. Look at this ascendant next to Beta Persei. Just as I'm about to begin the topic, um, and I want to take a moment to honor Beta Persei, and I'll bring in where's my Beta Persei oil, and I'll begin with the story of how I created the oil because back then um, there was a certain energy that came on board, and then I hear a lady say, don't let that energy interfere with what you do. And that energy had to do with sacrifice. It says sacrificing something for the sake of everything, for the sake of all people. And that basically is coming from banking. Okay, it's an energy that came from banking a system or even banking elite. And they do human sacrifice. So this talisman actually was with the best of oils, really, like blue lotus or even open to smell it. I'm not going to use it topically because I had to leave. And although I think most of it's still good, I think I need to rinse it or something. But I would not, no. Um, yeah. And the reason I keep it is because I keep it close to the talisman. But it's not for use. It's basically um, and then I saw two lizards appear. One was and I saw the story about the lizards. The quick lizard that said humanity is doomed, and the slow lizard that said humanity is saved. And when I did the blend, I dedicated this talisman for the topic of expandable children and kind of like to tend to that and to abolish that, particularly from the currency and so on. Which is why when that energy came around, I thought that they were on board. And when I said this is for the children, they were like really angry, and I'm like, I didn't know why. Um, and then that person would, his energy would be involved with trying to traffic and do horrible, horrible things like stealing creative power and stuff like that. But that was absolutely not the beginning of that thing, and people are mind controlled there. So this touches on something, and I came to do an episode about Chiron, and I'm saying Chiron in Aries or in a Mars sign is tending to the wounds in our masculinity. And the previous episode was really tending to that. Um, whether it's the sovereignty, the identity, okay, the failed army, the wound around that which is the best, okay, the best missiles flopping. It wasn't the $19 drones. It was for the $9 drones. It was it was the 5 million missile. And there was it didn't explode. It's too expensive. But then it fell on a civilian's house, and in a fit of anger and rage, um, and humor conjoined, I said, "That's funny comparison to the things that I'm tending to." Um, and this is the Chiron in Mars sign, Chiron in Aries, which is the wound around the sovereignty, identity, what it takes to have a sovereign identity. Okay, this is where the projects of MK Ultra, MK often, any mind control is reliant on harming the life energy, okay, of a person, and particularly the sexual energy, which is the life energy. So whether it's by sexual boundary violation per se, or by bullying or whatnot, or all types of abuse and torture, um, And those things are done to fragment the identity, okay, to allow for basically to have mind control. And the wound around consciousness, the wound around the sense of self, the wound around the face, because think about the Hamas bones coming back to Israel. Okay, and then I'm like, okay, that's Chiron Aries. Chiron will ingress into Taurus, and actually it ingresses into Taurus not too far off from where we are. I think 2026 it's already ingressing into Taurus. So Chiron was stationed direct on the 22nd degree, which is the 4-time touch on the 22nd degree, which I find unusual. Planets usually don't touch more than 3 times on a degree during the retrograde and direct phase. And let's see when does Chiron ingress into Taurus. And the special thing about it is that we're going from tending to the wounded masculinity, okay, to the wounded femininity. And I think within the wounded masculinity, the wounds of the feminine already begin to appear. And why did I open with the story about how I made the Beta Per Se talisman? It was basically showing of how the vulnerability and the energy trust that I gave um, in that, because somebody came to basically create something with me, and they came from the banking elite, and they themselves were a child that was raped. And so for me, it was like, okay, that I just allowed that energy to be there. And that person was later involved in something that risked my life. Um, whereas, um, okay, whether volitionally or not, okay, it was mind control, um, but that shows of something that was wounded around the psychic trust to create something that's actually benefic for humanity together. And again, I didn't invite, I didn't call in that energy, but I was just doing that talisman, and that energy arised. So Chiron ingresses into Taurus June 20, 2026. And this is where the wound of the masculine, or the wound of masculine, leads to wounds of the feminine. Both cases we talk about sexual boundary violation, which harming the life energy, or even attempt to take the life energy. And when people become less trusting, then men are less able to provide, and women are becoming men-like, not because of that's their gender expression, but because they're not feeling so safe to basically be in their feminine. Now, people that carry the two genders more prominently, um, that can express itself from tending to the wounded masculine within and to tending to the wounded feminine within. Now, there is the Chiron Aries, so there's also the wound around ritual abuse, causing both, for example, Tipolei Amara in Israel, which is something that is beyond horrid and cruel, where a person is gay and they try to force him to be straight. Okay? That's like, hey, abolish satanic abuse, and if that person is originally straight, they will be straight, and if that person is originally gay, they will be gay. And here is the other side of the wound, is that a lot of people that have gay gender expression, or even gay sexuality, is sometimes a defense mechanism that as the person um, feels safe, they don't just show on their gay side, but also some of them are like, wait a second, maybe for those people that have ability to be able to like both. Um, like, okay, maybe I can be with the same sex or something like that, but actually, when I'm safe and embodied, I'm actually attracted to. Okay, I'm actually straight sexual. Okay, and so and that's an unexpected wound where Chiron meets Aries, and we discover that some of the ritual abuse was meant to create and alter the sexuality at large, including gender, a preference for sexuality, and gender expression. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that we are going back to there are only two genders and so on and so forth, because that in itself would also be re-wounding. Okay, for a person, let's say that they're gay, to go to tipule amara or to try to make of them straight, this is as cruel as to make of a straight person be forcibly gay, or to rape someone. um, in fact, the act of raping was meant to make people able to have sex without love, which is not the natural state of being, except that the world has not known natural state of being. Um, and so, and this is where people call natural, some is completely unnatural because being born into inhumane torture is not natural. It's actually a result of cloning. There was actually a scandal about selling DNA. So within that, we are moving to Chiron in Taurus, and this is the first touch of Chiron in Taurus, 20 June 2026. Chiron has been in Aries since 2018, 2017, 18. And so I remember the fork in the road. Listen to Rockwell on her path of freedom, and she said, with Chiron, we're going to be left to our own devices. It's kind of like our angels, our archangels, all the things that used to heal us, the channeling. We're going to be left to our own devices because Aries is something that is done self-sustainability. So we're going to have to be our own healers. And indeed, I had my psychologist go in MK Ultra on me, threatening my life and psychically attacking me for a prolonged period of time, with personalities that try to help. And so I'm like, the psychologist is verrückt. Okay, it's did, but it's kind of like, um, the psychologist is gebroekt. I don't know what to do. And that was the ingress of Chiron to Aries. So it is. And mind you, that was before the Nova, before the 7th of October. Like, this is where therapists that even didn't have they were just like therapists seeing patients and like snakes coming out of their head. So it's kind of like, oh, at least they're going to believe the crazy people now because that's not psychosis. That's MK often, and but before that, nobody knew what's energy, and so yes, so that is the amounts of pain coming out of me um, as I speak about it. So Chiron Taurus is going to tend to the wounds around the feminine, um, and probably and it doesn't just tend to. It's about healing. For example, in Chiron Aries, I discovered that sexual sovereignty is so important because they use that to fragment the identity, and people care so much about rape, um, or not to be raped because it's their sovereignty, and so I learned about that the rape start with the boys. Basically, the boys rape the boys, and then they rape the women. And the boys, when they rape the boys, they make of them like the women. But I basically learned that this is done to fragment the boys and make them mind controlled. And this is how sexual sovereignty is important to intelligence, Aries, the sovereign soldier. Okay, sovereignty in general, like a country and so on. Um, the I am, and that was like, you know, that was something that is like, oh, that, so that's why we care about this so much. Because let's say Aquarius, for example, or even the Inuit would see sexuality as a service, and there are more intelligences to that that can denote that compatibility at whether the touch is coming to honor or coming to take from, um, and whether there is witchcraft on the lower astral that is kind of like on not honoring life energy type of frequencies, and this is also leading to like mass assassination, attempt to political assassination. Actually, one of my posts today was like there were right-wing politicians being quoted on stuff they said on rape, and I'm like, I just gave them the same speech with political assassination. and, and by the way, when I turned into political assassination prevention, I was like completely like this. So how should I say that? That was a realm where something in me was completely dissociated, and there were so many funny things that I said. I think there's this particular politician where I wrote things that with before knowing about the cloning project, before knowing about the satanic abuse, before knowing about everything, that I'm like, if I just made a booklet out of the funny things, that and right now I don't even remember them. I just remember that when I discovered those things, I was just like laughing at myself so much, and the signs were there. It was almost, and yeah, it's just really funny juxtapositions. Um, yeah, and there's also Mars. This has to do with victory and winning, and kind of like the rapists see themselves as winners, and if somebody is raped, they're being seen as loser, and that was like, that's just so weird. That's just so, because any participation on the violation of sexual boundaries is disempowering, which is why rapists feel like the victim, because when somebody says no and somebody holds them accountable, they go back into their victim state. Now, they're definitely victims of the ones that raped them, but not of the person who's setting boundaries. So, but because the rape is coming from a moment of not a moment, but disempowerment and helplessness of the raped child trying to get into position of power and relieve the rage, but on another helpless person, then they become addicted, because they would have like a peak of release, and then they would become addicted. I also learned about consciousness in the brain, and kind of like that people come on like violent scenes, that it connects to the people are more susceptible to lose like their ability to have erection and orgasm, um, because of watching certain types of porn, would be the people that had certain traumas that the porn scenes and the witchcraft around that is touching on. And that's basically how, and this is also why they do that to children, so they become more susceptible. For example, when I was in university, then we were shooting a film, and one of the scenes was in a video shop that was a sex shop, and so everybody looking at the magazines in between the scenes and so on. And then I was like, I came back home and it felt like this really weird energy that tries to affect my sexual energy. And I'm like, I don't like that, so I just kicked it out. And I actually never watched porn because of that. I was just like, I don't like something interfering in my sexual energy that I don't like. And that was kind of like being disillusioned um, from porn. Uh, because for me, when I was 14, it was like better sex for better world, and I said it in 2025, meaning sexual sovereignty, and and that is in verbatim, because the sexuality that is actually sovereign and embodied and so on, does make for a better world, whereas sexual boundary violation make for such a world that even the peace talks are done by raping children as wealth consolidation. And I think that Jupiter Procyon retrograde is going to have a lot to do with that. And look, June, Mercury will be 22 in Cancer, and Jupiter will just have crossed Procyon. So we are going to be moving from the wounded masculinity to the wounded femininity. And with Chiron, we're probably going to see the many things that Uranus and Taurus showed us, but this time through the wound and the healing, which is the connection between sex chakra, throat chakra. Okay? For example, for people that don't know that, then when they try to recover from sexual energy violation, they're like, if they grew up in culture which go like, don't raise your voice, sharpen your argument, or words are nothing, do something, and so on, people forget the power of the active speech and the power of the voice, that the visceral embodied voice and expression in stating the boundary, and how important it is to renew that connection of sex chakra, throat chakra, um, and stand in that sovereignty. Okay, the fact that our architecture is not nearly um, compatible with orgasmic birthing and orgasm, which is basically the preparation for that orgasmic birthing. Okay, it's both important for conception, like the biological reason um, to that, and the expression of the voice that is so important, both to the identity and to basically the moving of the energy. It's expression. We want when we want life born into the world, it's a big orgasmic expression of all the emotions, and then when they are contained and accepted, then we have a happy conception, happy orgasm, and happy birthing. Which is when I say happy, I mean, of course, there are all the emotions there, but that's a conception that actually brings a baby to the world, um, and we're going to be addressing all those wounds. Think about it: cloning projects, people not even when they're not born as clones, um, the many restrictions on whether it's our housing, whether it's the neighbors, whether it's the hospitals, whether it's all kinds of weird medical substances that were given. By the way, when I looked at the Johnson and Johnson litigation against risperidone, risperidal, risperidone 911, in Hebrew it sounds even better. Teva needs people that are invested in avedot benefesh, which basically means lost lives. And it's like from being boycotted because of a genocide to being boycotted, hopefully, because of a massive global democide. But the Johnson and Johnson litigation uh, was about risperidone growing both breasts in men and breast cancer, and that's not the only thing that it's growing. Okay, it's growing terror, to be to be very particular, um, and so this is this is showing, okay, with Neptune in Aries, patient sovereignty, and how important it is for healing, um, But that's a wound around masculinity, yeah. They didn't ask for gender affirming care. And and it's a psychiatric suppose it's not a medicine, it's a torture device, but it's supposed to fix somebody's neural activity, chemical balance in in the identity part. That's like honor sexual sovereignty, honor sexual sovereignty, honor sexual sovereignty. Uh, Mars is also housing first because it's real estate, and it was not discovered that the wealth consolidation is a ritual of satanic abuse that is actually done on real estate and resources. Now, Chiron in Taurus, probably we're going to see the connection between the land and again, um, the feminine voice, the voice, fertility, sensuality, connection, all the things that Uranus did, but we're going to see them through the wound and the recovery. It's very difficult to predict what will Chiron bring because he hasn't been there yet. Okay, but for the people that have Chiron in Taurus, that would be their Chiron return. Um, and yeah, I'm just trying to think about predictions. Um, oh, okay. For most living people, except for the boomers, for the early boomers, and the Centaurians, um, ageism. Uh, by the way, today I saw a short about Gen Z moms. It wasn't teenage moms, Gen Z moms. What Gen Z moms do, and I'm like, as a millennial, I require to have my golden age ticket to the train. And there are all these people that come to see the shows in like the concerts and stuff. Like, I want my coffee in concert. And so, um, but most people about like, how should I say that? As of 67, 6, something like that, folk can have Chiron in Taurus and Sedna in Taurus. Yeah, Sedna in Taurus, which means that. Um, okay, this was funny. The usual boomers that I think about are people that attended to their political assassination or something, prevention. And then came like, okay, oh, Annika Lucas is also boomer. Oh, I didn't mean to jab Annika Lucas. It's a different crowd. uh, but this is where the Centaurians came from because some of them were promised to be Centaurians. Anyway, yeah, I do feel like in the golden ages. And, but listen, Sun has been in Taurus since the end of the 60s, which means that for many people, the story of somebody sacrificing somebody or committing treason in somebody to acquire like demonic powers, the Illuminati in modern society, like Inuit, it was yeah, da 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 da. Sedna was like that. She didn't want anybody. Fuck that. It was kind of like the Illuminati, but for the Inuit. And when I was tortured, then there was attempt to there was a photo that I had with Panda, and I had a squinting eye. Now for me, the squinting eye was algo because it's the blinking eye, and I had no idea it's an Illuminati. So they're trying to make me Illuminati or something, and I'm like, I'm not Illuminati. I just no, thank you. Like honor sexual sovereignty, then we'll talk. Um, but this is where Mars is going to be next to Beta Persei. But this is where the wound with Taurus Sedna is around that. And Chiron, the Illuminati wound. Um, yeah. So those are a part of the things that I predict for Chiron in Taurus. Now Taurus is also the union, the diplomacy, the sisterhood. We're gonna see the ones around the sisterhoods. For example, an Indian woman was commenting, I don't remember where, and she was saying that there was these circles of women, like in her home place in India, and she said the amount of hatred that these women had towards each other, hatred, vanity, jealousy, um, how should I say that? Um, then and that was kind of wow. um, there was even a joke of that came from India about two men that barely know each other beginning to work in a building or in construction, or cooperate and trust each other with their lives, and, and women are like, she's been my friend all her life, I don't trust her. So I think a lot of that wound is going to rise up to the surface. And I think a lot of the Me Too try to like make it go away, or kind of show how men cause women to be fragmented and so on, trying to revive the sisterhood. Um, but this is going to spark that wound around the sisterhood. And I think this time women will not have men to blame, um, because they're going to have to do their own shadow work. Okay, for example, for men that are dealing with their own toxic masculinity wound. Think about it, the Me Too was aftermath of the Me Too when Chiron ingressed into Aries. So man, a lot of men were just like dealing with the fact that something intuitively told them that that's not the course of healing that they should take, like to rape people. Something was telling them that it's not right, that it's not this, that it's not that. Um, but that intuition never got neither validation nor accountability from the environment. Um, and there were actually a lot of men that began to work to promote safety for women after that. And I think that the last degrees of Aries Chiron will be a lot about the wounds of sexuality. For example, after the October War, there were a lot of, particularly, yes, the attempts to use sexuality, like rape. Rape doesn't set a boundary; it violates it, and that's something that. And when sexual boundaries are violated, it breeds violation of boundaries. If people don't honor sexual sovereignty, it breeds violation of boundaries. And then people say, "Oh, that was something that I don't know. They shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have said that. They shouldn't have done that. You should have raped. You should have raped. You should have not have raped. You should not have raped." Now, to align that balance, speech comes out, and so this is also where um, this is that ascendant, that ascendant, that degree. Um, this is also where can we have Mercury, Mercury. Mercury is in trouble in Scorpio. I don't know why. Mercury, who are you fighting in Scorpio? Sextiling the nodes, sextiling Ketu, trining Rahu. Coming to transmute something. Probably communicating that topic. Oh, because Scorpio is such a private sign. But again, sexual boundary violation means speech is the curation. And people that feel violated by somebody speaking something that is private should honor sexual boundaries in spirit and in matter. No excuses. And if it was violated because, I don't know, some ritual or dumbfuckery or whatnot, then the understanding that speaking openly is the curation, and addressing these things publicly is the curation, because it's not something that somebody can solve in private, because that was basically the core of everything, of the foundations of everything being violated. And that comes to be transmuted. So, and this is, yeah, this is like stating the obvious. But I hope that the last degrees of Chiron are going to be around men regaining their own sexual sovereignty, um, particularly in those secret societies and those things that happen so hidden. And after 7th of October, there was again many cases. There were many cases where a man said, "Well, I also raped. Does that make me like Hamas?" I'm like, "Well, duh." The core of what created Hamas was basically sexual boundary violation. This is how they create terrorists, okay, of whichever, whether they assassinate Charlie Kirk, or they do ritual satanic abuse, um, or they do terror bombings like, what was his name? Uh, Baraguti, that Israel didn't release, which is kind of like, and I addressed that in a previous episode, um, of, of, of the problematic and intricate issue, and yet the fact that, well, bombing civilians is not good, but also doing those classified projects, medical experiments in children that bring them to be a terrorist is ook niet wel. So this is where, yeah, the attempt to use rape as control or as um, anything is basically futile. Okay, it creates the opposite. And this is where, um, yeah, I think Chiron at the final degrees of Aries is tending to that. Um, think about the fact that it conjoins Aries in Aries, and Aries is a lot about like LGBTQ, but also cloning, and it's about people, like before people insist on their pronouns, um, sexual sovereignty must come first. Sometimes it can come afterwards if it's like a Uranus case, or Uranus Mars or something like that, where it would come in a roundabout way or in an unpredictable way. But if there is no sexual sovereignty, there is no sexual identity. There's no identity. Basically, that's what it means. And that is the thing that everybody should bring into consideration, because and then, if they're if somebody's being violated in that way, why would they, like, why, the world can end, and that's okay because that's more humane. Um, so I think with Chiron Venus, it's going to be about the wounded femininity, which is going to again bring to the sensuality and was a woman safe to be a woman and all that thing. Because, of course, it's going to be the aftermath of nowadays, which means plenty women will not feel safe to be women, and the implications of that. Okay, what happens when a woman is not feeling safe to be a woman? First of all, she doesn't appreciate anybody. Appreciation cannot, like, if one doesn't have sexual sovereignty, how can they be appreciative? And appreciation is the love language that's very important to the masculine, both to women but also to the masculine. To be honored, to be appreciated, to be respected. Okay, if a woman is going through sexual boundary violation, she respects no one. Like, how can she respect someone that is violating sexual boundaries, even if it's her father? Okay, particularly, and I opened with Beta Per Se, where people were raped and being accused for being raped. That is the Medusa Gorgon rage, which on a mundane level manifests dead bodies upon dead bodies. And by the way, when in a society that honors sexual sovereignty, Beta Per Se is a wealth talisman. Okay, and that's something that people need to remember. The historical contexts have connection to what how the planet energy, okay, the cultural context has connection to how the planet energy is affecting the people. A lot of that topic. Um, and this is, yes, more things that I can try to predict for Chiron. Venus is kind of like the beauty industry and the wounds around the beauty industry, or think about, the makeup that a woman wears, and she's like, is that a mineral makeup? Is that this? Was that makeup created by women that worked in sex, that were sex trafficked? Okay, and used by women that are sex trafficked in MK Ultra. And again, that is another thing that is, that I can predict for Chiron Taurus. Um, More Chiron Taurus. Um, the voice. Okay, we're probably going to have, think about the, with throat singing and how it is healing for the nervous system and so on and so forth. It's also healing from sexual boundary violation because sex chakra, throat chakra, expression. Um, and the land, the wound around the land, so we're going to be tending to all those, both minerals and pollution, and how they are all result of not honoring sexual sovereignty on the land, and how that changes basically the face of the earth. The face of the earth is an Aries word, but the Taurus, think about Uranus and Taurus, it was all the guerrilla gardening, and how that is so connected to, do we let something be in its natural beauty, or do we let something express its natural self? Do we do agrarian, that is in a culture that is industrialized? Do we see women as a product? And what are the implications when we do? I mean, when we traffic human DNA, then basically we treat people as commodity. That's the Chiron Aries, um, which is okay. And what is the result of that? I'm talking about the 23 and Me, 23 Me, and something like that. The scandal of those, the companies that do the DNA and they are just selling the DNA data or the DNA itself, which is cloning. Um, and so this is where we're also going to, oh, we're going to have wounds around cars and car industry. Chiron is always a holistic healer, okay? It is, Chiron is where, for example, when people had problem with housing in Chiron, as a natal Chiron in the fourth house, with the ruler in Aries, then they had to go through the curation of their own grief, upbringing, and whatnot. And this is where people began to feel the energies of a house that was not. And of course, I mean, if a child was buried alive to celebrate the real estate transitioning from these hands to these hands, then the person that comes to buy a property for investment or to rent a place, I just think about me digging half moons in the soil that was of a plot of land that was completely like a junkyard, and I'm like, oh cool, I like those projects. Let's turn this junkyard into a thriving rewilding type of agriculture, not knowing that there could be dead bodies buried because the place was belonging to some sort of a mafia. I basically rented an apartment 3 years by a realtor that was a mafia, and I don't know who was the owner of the place, which probably was a mafiosi. Chiron! Chiron! So imagine digging half moons when Chiron is in Taurus. Did I tell you about the time where only time I experienced something like alien energy? I was digging half moons and trying to begin a preparation for like uh, um, a passage where people with wheelchair could travel, like, and to make it a slope wheelchair friendly to people or disability friendly to people, so they can also get to travel. And I wanted to have later dams built, so basically to have the place where everybody is coming to see the flood and then dying. This happens every year in Israel. Like, this is why I'm telling you, when Israel was founded, the Arabs said, just give them a country, they're going to kill themselves. And that was a very correct prediction. In fact, they needed to fight other people to stop killing themselves for a slight bit of a second. And so there were no, you cannot find 10 Jews, which is minyan, for a prayer in Bnei Brak, which is a Haredi Orthodox Jewish city. Probably other religions have the same problem. Um, but I'm like, if people are like talking about anti-Semitism, that's the worst it's going to be. So, um, so I was thinking about to build these dams and so on. I was inspired by a guy in Texas who started building dams, and I go to the plot of land. I begin the digging process, and it's summerish, and I take some food and water with me, and then I look really funny, and people ask me if I need help, and I don't feel comfortable to tell them to bring me sushi or something. And then as I was in that place, later I was driving away, and there was like this alien energy, like aliens, and I'm like, listen up, aliens. Sovereignty is sovereignty. um, but there was like this alien energy, and then I would find out that they want to drill the oil there. I'm like, okay, they can drill the oil in the worst, like, not ecosystemic way. And I had this beautiful idea of like, when we rewild the place and we build the dams, then the place becomes a green again, and people don't die in the floods because there are no floods, and there are rivers, so we can build housing that is like around the wood logs or whatever will grow there, and we can build the ancient structures that are kind of like spherical and have a half, kind of like having a half sphere to collect the water and produce water and filter them from the rainwater. And all the solutions that don't go with the whiff. Anti-whiff. So, uh, yeah, and then there was this alien energy. So, I don't know. The people that said, why don't people want to work? I think are taking back their words. It's like, of course, like we can build like half moons and build a dam and do it and next to the Dead Sea, and that's also both touristic attraction and so on. And then like all they really need to do is honor sexual sovereignty, and it will be like fine. So, more about Chiron in Taurus. Where's my water? I need water. That's what's up. Chiron in Taurus. What can I think about it with Chiron in Taurus? Um, oh, convoys. Oh, healing. I talked about cars. It's going to be. Oh, well, they to produce cars, they still do this creative energy stealing that I saw happening. I don't know if somebody tricked Elon Musk or whatnot, or where it came from. Um, but that was definitely not legit. Particularly not because it was something that was trying to create mother wounds, and that is so not legit. Um, and so I think we're gonna know a lot more about those rituals done in luxury cars, cars in general, trucks as well, like cars that deliver produce or goods, chain of supply, and how that affects, for example, the inaccessibility of food to communities like the Inuit community. All the people that were counting on the hidden practices to stay hidden in the age of air and fire, um, uh, they need to burn their expectations on the stake when it comes to uh, staying hidden. Yes, that's the sentence that came out of me right now, and I need to drink water. Um, Chiron Venus, Chiron Taurus. You see, Aries, Chiron Aries is about speaking the truth and standing for the truth, and how it's important for the identity and the I am. Chiron in Venus sign would be about probably also the feminine rage and feminine expression of that rage, even in an artistic way. So there's going to be a lot of art that depicts the feminine rage or addressing the feminine wounds. Or there's this Israeli artist that is making a lot of nice paintings, and she did nice paintings of Medusa, talking about recovery from trauma. And so I think that art therapy, there was, I know I cannot say art therapy without joking about Adolf Hitler. I'm sorry. I described that in life. And then Anneke told us that there was a ritual to do with Hitler in the cults, in the network, because they would play, different people would play Hitler. And I would always have a very weird take on things that is refreshing and something that's like a perspective that is kind of like never before seen. Because I'm that Uranus Sag, I will always have those fresh new perspectives that startle even me. But unfortunately, Hitler, like Voltaire, because we have to compare them. I mean, why take two weirdest of the juxtapositions and see what do you find in common? And that's a nice a thought experiment game to play. People can see that I wasn't doing debate seriously. I was doing more model UN. Um, and then they would give us, let's say, if Israel. So it's like, good morning, you are Iraq or you are Iran, and of course they would pick me for those countries because. And then I would have these really serious people that that honor sexual boundaries only when it comes to them. Um, and yeah, I mean, if you silence the testimony of someone, then what can I say? Um, and then they would be like, well, do you find it funny? You find it funny? You find it funny, huh? I'm like, yeah. That's the point of Model UN, learning how to think in the mind of another country, however weird that country is, and we're supposed to have diplomatic relations. So of course, like if I'm Iran, then I'm Iran, Iran today, and I have to represent Iran the best I can, and then that was Model UN. So this is, um, yeah, this is basically. Then of course, yeah, no, but perhaps I'm being too critical because that was the same person that would ask for my opinion on the things that they wrote and stuff like that. So it was just like this disagreement about that, um, but also other sides. So more things that I can think about. Give me something, Taurus. Food, food, food. Aries is food that's kind of like the food industry and the scams around the food industry and stuff like that. But this is also Uranus Taurus, and Chiron in Taurus is going to curate a lot of our food addictions, um, having the food being organic. Think Uranus Taurus, but with the healing perspective, um, paying emphasis to let's say, meeting the herb in its natural habitat, all these things that are going to be of healing property uh, in a very holistic way. So again, it's kind of like a Uranus Taurus all over again, and Uranus Taurus happens once in. When I think about people with natal Uranus in Taurus, I don't know too many people from this age group. I know Rachel was with Uranus Taurus. With Chiron Taurus, sorry, Chiron Taurus. Yeah. I mean, people born since 2018 would have Uranus in Taurus, but 84 years. Why are we laughing? People should be living to this age. Um, sacrificed to the Moloch. Nay. And so